The farmers and ranchers are less than 2% of the population. We have our story to tell. It's a better deal if we can come across with a unified voice so that people can understand better what the farmers and ranchers are going through here.
Well, I always say that, one farmer out on the range could yell to the top of his lungs and no one's really going to hear him. But when he unites his voice with many others in his community, many others across his state, and then across the United States' American Farm Bureau, that united voice gets heard.
So if we look at the Farm Bureau's foundational values as this Venn diagram, one of empowerment through education, and two, that we create vitality in our rural communities, and finally this third piece of the puzzle, unity through the democratic process, where we say we've got to work together for us to thrive. To me, when I studied our history, those are the three pieces that I saw come together to create resilience in an organization that would last. Wiliam McCormick, he was a homesteader in Nebraska, in western Nebraska, in fact, for nearly 20 years before he purchased his farm in Flathead County, Montana. Now, he moved to Montana in 1907, but in Nebraska, he was elected Justice of the Peace, and he was known for holding court, particularly on cattle and horse rustlers. He continued to pursue these values that you could tell were very important to him individually, and that's pursuing what he saw to be right and fair and just and equal. And he quickly identified a few things in Montana that he felt needed justice applied. As a farmer and rancher in Flathead County, he described the state's system of taxation as, and I quote, a patchwork of what is unscientific and unjust, throwing, as it does, all of the burden on property and exempting incomes. And at the time, farmers like McCormick had really good reason to cry foul. They carried an overwhelming bulk of the county and state government's burden through their property taxes. In 1924, the State Tax Commission reported that farmers paid 32% of the state's revenue, while railroads paid just 17%, livestock paid 10%, and the mines contributed less than 9%. Besides being highly inflated, local property tax rates often arbitrarily varied based on proximity to shipping points rather than actual production values. But the thing was, these farmers had to be bold enough to leave their own farm and talk freely with his peers to recognize that this inequity was happening. They could only fully realize the problem at hand when they addressed it with a unified voice.
The democratic grassroots process that is the hallmark of farm bureaus across the country, to me, means that as a producer in my little community, if I have something that's impacting me in agriculture, I can gather together with my peers, we can have a conversation, we can do some problem solving at that level, and then we can take our solutions, or our suggested solutions, to the state level, argue our case, gather some affinity, if you will, and pass good policy that can help us solve some of our issues.
We encourage everybody to look at our organization like a three-legged stool. We all are familiar with that three-legged milk stool that our families grew up with, milking either that cow or the dairy herd. And in each one of those legs represents a leg of Farm Bureau. One being the county level is one leg, the state level being a leg, and then the national level being that third leg. If one of those legs disappear, we would topple over as an organization, not be as effective as we could be. But the most important leg on that stool is the County Farm Bureau. It is the basis of our organization. It's where our policy comes from, and it's where the strength of our organization comes from. Because as we move forward, talking about the issues for farmers and ranchers across this country, the engagement of our county leaders, the engagement of our county members are the ones that drives our successes across the finish line. We just prepare the groundwork, and they're the ones that harvest the crop when they let their voice be heard through their engagement.
To Together, these Farm Bureau members in Flathead County, they took their classic approach to problem solving. They decided to gather the facts, study the problem, and identify a solution. They tapped their county agricultural agent to help send a questionnaire to 138 representative farmers to secure data on real farm income. And based on the survey results and the tax records, they were able to prove that tax assessments were unrealistic in relationship to income and were wildly different from farm to farm. So with this data in hand, the Flathead County Farm Bureau's Taxation Committee then called other taxpayers to form what they called the United Flathead County Taxpayers League. So if the farmers were stronger together, they were surely stronger still when they brought members of their community together too. Together, the League requested the Board of Equalization reduce the assessed valuation on non-irrigated tillable lands in Flathead County by 28%, and the board granted a reduction of 20%. These examples of local political problem solving reflected much larger political ambitions for this new Farm Bureau organization. The organization was making a steady journey beyond its original educational confines, and that culminated with the election of Wiliam McCormick as the state's 5th Montana Farm Bureau president. He was fresh off 2 terms as lieutenant governor of the state. This was a significant shift in the Farm Bureau's makeup because up to this point, Farm Bureau had firmly held to the idea that they were solely an educational organization. Their connection with the land-grant university system and the agriculture extension services created some pretty firm boundaries around their abilities to enter the political realm.
Education continues to be our #1 project in the Farm Bureau, if you want to say it that way. We are focused on educating ourselves, educating the urban folks. As population demographics change, there's more and more people that don't understand what each of us do. That's our first and foremost. It became clear early on that our members wanted to have a voice, a better understanding of what was happening, and we couldn't necessarily fall in line with what the Extension Service was at that point in time.
McCormick, more than anyone before him, vocalized this idea that off-farm political issues, taxes, transportation, and trade particularly, would determine the farmer's fate. Further, his immediate predecessor, Wiliam Stockton, was chair of this new Committee on Organization, essentially the means by which the Farm Bureau turned itself into a true professional organization. So suddenly, McCormick had a structure and the political know-how to effect some pretty serious change with a unified voice. Now, of course, Farm Bureau was pretty heavily criticized for entering into the political realm at this time. Not only did this mean that they had to split their formal relationship with the extension services, but it opened up a lot of fears and concern about partisan politics further dividing the already dwindling farm populations. The Montana Farmer reported in 1927 that it most certainly is true that the Farm Bureau is now in politics, but it is not in partisan politics. It has no party preference. The Bureau believes it should call the attention of its members to statesmen who are out of sympathy with agriculture, regardless of party. So in 1929, that unified Farm Bureau voice was credited for defeating a bill that would have permitted the levying of 25 more tax mills on general property for state purposes. And following the lead of McCormick's hometown Flathead County, the State Farm Bureau Taxation Committee went to work in preparation for the next legislative session. They announced a tax revision campaign in favor of a general and graduated income tax to supplant the present state property tax. Farm Bureau campaigned to shift more of the state's tax burden to an income tax, which the legislature approved for the first time in the early 1930s. The Farm Bureau's unified effort paid off at the local and the state level.
We are a grassroots organization, so our members can come to us at our annual meeting, which is in November, and bring policy forward, and we can make policy. I mean, we have a book of policy that we do that is voted on by our membership, and that is what we lobby or we work towards if the policy in that book. So it's a unified voice of our membership in that, and not everyone's going to have the same opinion. So that's why we do these things. We bring in representatives of every Farm Bureau in the state, and we sit there and delegate for a couple of days to see what we want to make policy on.
Running the delegate session for the last 5 years has really been the highlight of my Farm Bureau year. I really enjoy traveling across the state and going to county meetings, but at those county meetings, that's where the grassroots policy begins. And then it's vetted at that level, and then it moves on to the state level. And at the state level, then the delegate body gets to deal with those policy proposals. And some of them are pretty easy to deal with. They're a pretty much up or down vote. And some of them are really controversial. And the delegate body spends a great deal of time talking about the pros and cons of those policies that have come from the local level and how they would impact Montana Farm Bureau and Farm Bureau members, and how they could potentially have some unintended consequences. And they just do an amazing job. They really get to the heart of every single issue, and at the end of the day, they make some good decisions, and we have good policy.
Well, you know, I've spent a lot of time traveling this country, and my efforts, but the reason for that effort is to make sure that the County Farm Bureau member and the leadership in those counties understand that as president of this national organization, I know that they're the most valuable piece of it. They need to know what we're doing for them each and every day, so that when they stop to take time to work on policy, they feel like it's valuable, because it is valuable. It's the most valuable thing that they can do to bring that one united voice, is to sit down and go through that policy book. Things change, agriculture change, political environments change. We need to know what our farmers think at the county level about each and every issue that's in that policy book. I promise them, even though they feel like it's a burden, and sometimes some of them might even say it's a waste of time, it is not a waste of time. It is what makes us powerful, and it's what makes us Farm Bureau proud, and it's what makes us strong today.
The fact that Farm Bureau is still going strong today tells you that the decisions they made 100 years ago were the right decisions, but they're still very relevant today.
We're a family, and we believe that as we stick close together as a family, it keeps us strong. Our county farm bureaus are always there as a family unit, contributing to their community.